Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm so excited for you to hear this next interview. I have a good friend of mine. Her name is Nicole Ross. She is a recipe developer, and she's going to introduce herself in a minute and share everything that she does and why she does it and all those things. But I decided to bring Nicole on because I'm fully transparent about this. I am not a recipe queen. I don't use recipes, and I feel really bad for my clients because they always ask me for recipes, and I'm going to get on the bandwagon soon. I have one recipe in a folder of recipe documents for my clients. But I admit where that's not my strong suit. So I'm super excited to have Nicole here because she is going to teach us all about how you can look at a recipe, how you can interpret it, how you can use it, and basically take your favorite dish or maybe your not so favorite dish and make it something nutritious but also enjoyable. Because I think making healthy food taste good is probably like the one thing I always get backlash for. So anyways, without further ado, Nicole, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chat with you guys.
Yeah, so super excited. So Nicole and I connected a few months ago. We were on a panel. It was called Beauty Within, and it was really awesome. It was like all about how we can basically practice self-care and appreciate what we have about our bodies and our looks and all those things. And, you know, part of that still starts from like food and all that stuff. But it was just really a great way to connect. And so Nicole shared with everyone there kind of like where, you know, how Lashes and Lemons got started, which is her Instagram name. But I want you to share with our listeners just to say maybe who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Sure. So my name is Nicole, and I am the founder of Lashes and Lemons, but Lashes and Lemons is actually a side project and job for me. I actually am a full-time pediatric occupational therapist, and this is kind of just something that I started as a hobby and now has grown into a full side business. And I'm really happy doing both, and I see myself doing both for years to come because they both really give me so many benefits and really kind of allow me to have different skills and just experience different passion in different ways. But when I first started, it really just, I moved to New York. And like you said earlier, I really had no idea how to cook at all. And the first thing I did was look on Google, look on Pinterest, look on Instagram for recipes. And I really felt like it was such an archaic process because you'd see this really amazing picture, then you'd click on it, and then you'd have to scroll through a million different things to find it. And then you finally find the recipe, and then you have to take so many screenshots. And then by the time you do all that, you're probably not making it anyway. Mm-hmm. So I felt I was looking for this missing piece on how to make myself feel a little bit healthier and kind of just a little bit more confident about cooking. And I decided I was going to do it myself. So basically, I literally just started cooking and experimenting with different ingredients. I came, out of grad school and then really had a lot of time after work that, discovering that work-life balance was just very new for me. So you finish at 5, it's like, what do I do? Aside from, like going out to dinner, like meeting friends, there's really not much else. For me. But I started cooking a lot and just started taking pictures of things that I was making. I would send it to friends. I'd send it to my mom, and people would really like it. So I started to create an Instagram just to kind of document my progress and just create I love making things look beautiful. And I really think that you could elevate any dish by just plating it really beautifully. And that was the reason why Lashes and Lemons was the name. And there were no pictures of me because I really didn't want it to have anything to do with me. And, 3 years, we're at 3.5 years in, and it's really just grown. I have almost 30,000 followers on Instagram who I feel are really active and loyal and engaged followers who recreate my recipes all the time. And it's just such an incredible community of ideas and just excitement, and it's a lot of fun. So that's kind of how it started and where it is today.
That's crazy. And I literally did not know that you're a pediatric therapist. I literally didn't know this because it's crazy. The fact that you're running this business on the side.
Yeah.
That is really impressive. We're going to have you come back on and talk about that.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that I also have a full-time job. And sometimes I think having both makes me really humble in both. I think that I, don't let the little things get to me because I know the important things that have to get done. And if that makes me less of a perfectionist, fine. But I actually think it makes me a lot more successful because there's no time to really overthink everything. I just do.
Yeah.
And that really, allows me to be as authentic as possible with my community because it is what it is. We're all busy. We all have stuff going on. And I think it helps me not curate my content as much.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a lot of work. I definitely just came back from a full day at school and now I'm here like switching gears, but it keeps things exciting for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that has to take up a lot of your time. But it's awesome. I think when you're passionate about something, it doesn't even really feel like work.
Totally agree.
So I think that's so cool. Okay, so I'm wondering kind of, when you started creating these recipes, and then it obviously sounds like people started tasting them and making them and actually liking them. Like, how do you go about making a recipe and making sure that it's not just healthy or it has a healthy twist to it, but it also tastes good?
I think that what makes just a healthy meal, a recipe, is really adding in a bunch of different textures and flavors. Mm-hmm. And I think that I learned that from just watching so many cooking shows. Like, I'm a huge fan of Chopped, and they always say like, oh, it has a nice texture, but then you have the thickness of the sauce and you have the crunch from this and the bitterness of the arugula. And I think that just understanding that piece allows you to just take this healthy meal and really notice like the beautifulness, I don't know if that's a word, but like the beauty of
it.
of it. And it just makes it so much more exciting to eat at the same time. And I also think that in terms of being healthy, it just makes you so much more mindful while you're eating as well. And I just think when you're making something that you're super proud of, it's just such an overall positive experience.
Yeah, no, definitely. And even as you were talking, so one thing I have my clients do when they're trying to figure out what they're in the mood for, because if they don't spend that time to really think about it, what is it that they truly want to eat, then they're going to likely feel unsatisfied. And then it I work with a lot of people who struggle with binge eating or just emotional eating, and it leaves them feeling like they're not satisfied. And now they look to be satisfied in like just overindulgent ways, in ways that it doesn't make them feel good, right? So one thing I have them actually do is to go through an exercise where they like ask themselves, like, do I want something hot or cold? Do I want something crunchy or smooth? Do I want something salty or sweet? And I tell them that it's also okay when it's actually more than okay. Very often you're going to find that you're going to want a mixture of those things, right? Which is fine, but there are ways to do that, right? You can make a salad with some apples and some cheese and, other vegetables that bring the crunch to it and the sweetness to it, right? And there's a way to definitely get that. So I love that. I think that that's so true, because I think when people also too, when they think of healthy, they think of bland and boring.
Exactly. And I think that, when I moved to Manhattan, I just got out of grad school and I was just struggling with like a life transition of, okay, now my work, like school is done. I'm not up as late studying anymore. I really had so much time to like go out to dinner and do all these different things and, sit on the couch more. And my body 100%, experienced effects of just those lifestyle changes. So eating healthy was very important to me, but also like not like sacrificing or taking away foods that I really love. So one of my favorite things that I'm obsessed with lately is adding like bonza, like pasta to a salad. So I've been doing like, I'll make a box of bonza for like the week, and I'll take like a little bit of that, maybe do like a pesto or like a balsamic, and then add it with a salad with like maybe a little feta cheese, some chicken, and then just like some crudité vegetables. And it's the most satisfying and delicious thing. And you don't even realize that you're only eating like a little bit of pasta, you know? So I think that just combining all those different ingredients and flavors and textures is a really great way to kind of satisfy all of your cravings, especially if you don't know what you're in the mood for.
Yeah, definitely. And I think using condiments is a great way too, because that's also something that like has been demonized in diet culture, or just in, you know, in if you're healthy, it's like, once again, going back to bland and boring, and like watch your sauces and limit your sauce. And it's like, yeah, we want to be mindful of how much dressing we're using and all that stuff. But there's also like, if you don't use any of it, you're probably going to be like, well, what was that? Like, right? And because you mentioned pesto, I love pesto so much. It's so good. It can really make or break. Like, there's this huge difference between having like grilled chicken versus having like grilled chicken with some pesto on top. Like,
also pesto goes a long way too. And like, if you even add like, I know pesto can be very calorically dense for like a small amount. You can add like a little bit of almond milk to kind of water it down a little bit. So you can get the flavor of the pesto and then have a little bit more. Or, you can maybe add like a little more olive oil or something, but I've done everything pretty much. I try everything.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's all about kind of weighing like, okay, how much of this am I going to have in versus like, if I don't have it, what is that going to lead to? So if it leads to feeling unsatisfied, sometimes, the extra calorie and the tablespoon of dressing is worth it, because without it, it leads to like binging and raiding the refrigerator, right? So it's kind of weighing kind of the pros and cons there with that. Okay, so what advice, moving on to the next question that I have for you, what advice do you have for someone who maybe just doesn't even know how to follow a recipe? So like they see all these great recipes, ideas, but or maybe they don't like to cook, or just like they're really just not into it. But at the same time, they know that if they don't expand their palate and if they don't try new things, they're going to continuously kind of feel like stuck, and just like they want to be able to cook from home more. Even COVID probably forced people to cook from home more, so they kind of are just like faced with like preparing more food at home, but don't even know where to begin.
Well, this is actually where my two worlds collide a little bit, and my OT background comes into play, because occupational therapists are very task oriented, and we think about all of the elements of the activity, not just what the activity is. So is your environment set up? Do you have all of the tools that you need to make the recipe? Are you feeling too tired? Are you organized? You have to think about all those things to kind of get started. And if someone's new to cooking, I would definitely think about just investing in maybe 3 cooking tools that you feel really confident about using. So like a great nonstick pan is really important. Maybe I love a good silicone spatula. And then also like a lot of people are really into the air fryer. I am too, but as with a really small apartment, they definitely take up a lot of space. But pick a couple of things that you feel good about using, and then just use those when you're cooking. Like you don't need a whole Dutch oven, you don't need all that. And then focus on looking for recipes when you're confident with the tools. So pick one thing to kind of start. And also on my recipes alone, I like to keep them in like 5 to 10 steps or less. Less words, less jargon, very like, I don't know what julienning an artichoke means. Really simple, And if you have to go a little bit easier, like buying the broccoli florets instead of like the big piece of broccoli, make it easier on yourself. Like really look at the recipe and figure out, okay, how can I make this more approachable before just saying this looks too hard? Find something that you really want to accomplish. And I guarantee if you just break it down a little bit, find which tool you're going to use, where can I make this easier, and how much time do I need? I think it will be a lot easier.
That's
and
a good
also
point.
YouTube as well. I feel like YouTube has like, a lot of people are really good with video demonstrations, and now with like TikTok and Instagram stories, there are so many different resources to just make like, let's say you want to make like a spaghetti squash, and it's actually really hard to do that, but look on YouTube. I guarantee you could find like a 5-minute tutorial and probably 100 of them. And then you find one, content creator that you like, and then you start to follow that person and you expand that way. And I think that, that's why my Instagram has grown so much, because I think the more people that like my recipes, they share them with their friends, and that means I'm doing something right. So
totally.
Definitely utilize, a couple content creators that you really like, and ask them questions too. Like, do you have a great resource? I would definitely send someone a video from YouTube, like if I found it.
Awesome.
Pinterest or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And then I also think what I find is if someone sees a recipe and maybe they don't have an ingredient, or maybe I think that's the biggest one. Like, is it okay to make a recipe without obviously certain ingredients might be like the staple thing. Like, you can't go without like dough if you're making, or like wheat, or like, if you're making bread, like you need a flour, but like maybe some of the other stuff, like I think sometimes like recipes might have like these fancy ingredients that you have everything except for that one thing. And it's like, is it really going to make or break it? Like, can they still make it? What do you think about that?
Well, I always we can talk about that example with like maybe like an Asian type of recipe, because so I've been looking up the whole day. I'm like dying to make some type of stir fry, but I do not feel like going out to buy as one person rice wine vinegar, soy sauce, oyster, like all these different sauces that probably make the same thing. So what I would probably do is just go buy a stir fry sauce at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? Like, get a couple staples that that you like. And if you're cooking for a family of 5, it might be worth it to get all those different ingredients. But if you're one person like me and you don't want 10 bottles in your refrigerator, and
you're not cooking Asian, you're not cooking stir fry like every day. Yeah.
Exactly. Save it for a time that, you have company coming over, or you want a fun night activity and you're in the mood to do it. Great. But if it's going to make it easier for you to just buy the one ingredient, I would highly recommend it.
That's a really good point.
Save the time.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. So what about, are there any swaps that you find that like maybe when you're looking, either when you're creating a recipe or when you're looking at looking online at recipes, like the first thing that comes to my head is like replacing like applesauce with oil in like pancake mix or something, like, or like baked goods and stuff like that. Like, are there any like staple kind of recipe swaps that you recommend or tend to use, or does it depend on the recipe?
I feel like it's so hard, especially with baking, to find a swap, because unless you're swapping a flour, I feel like the recipe just never comes out the same.
Mm-hmm.
You don't do it if you don't follow directions. With baking, I think with, like let's say you don't have lime at home and the recipe calls for that, and you have lemon, use the lemon. Citrus. But I think with baking, it's really hard to find a swap. Also, like if you use, like let's say the recipe calls for almond flour and you use coconut flour, like the average person might not know that you need to add more liquid, because coconut flour absorbs more liquid than almond flour. So I think that when you're making recipes, definitely make sure to read the full notes. If the person, whoever is writing it, says like, if you're using coconut flour, add more of this or add more of that. But I typically don't make a lot of swaps when it comes to baking, because I'm not in the mood for it to not come out good after all that work.
Yeah, but that's a really good point, right? And so part of, I think, the being healthy is knowing that you can make a recipe. As said, you don't have to change everything about it, because once again, it's going to lead to that dissatisfaction, and chances are then you're going to spend time making something that didn't come out that well, and now you're upset about it and you go elsewhere to look for it, right? And so I think that's a really good point, that you don't have to change every recipe that you see. You can make it as is, and then just choose to have the portion that you're going to feel really good about.
And I think that's a little bit of an interesting kind of just a comment about where the health and wellness world is going, especially like on Instagram, where there's a lot of recipe creators. And it's like, we're always looking for these swaps of like, what's the lower carb option? What's the lower fat option? And sometimes, the best swap for you might just be the real deal, but a smaller piece. And, I kind of went through that experience last year on Thanksgiving. Like, I was trying so hard to make, all I wanted was like a pie. And I was looking online for hours of like all these different low carb or like low fat, like all these different low calorie pie recipes. And I ended up just saying, screw it. I'm just going to make a pie that has been in my family for so many years. And I had a portion, and it was delicious and everybody loved it. And sometimes you just have to make those choices if a smaller portion might just be the best thing and it might be enough,
That's
know?
awesome. Yeah. I think that's great. And I'm really glad that you brought up Thanksgiving because it's crazy that we're entering the last quarter of 2020 because what has this year been? It's been...
I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure it
out. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to release this in October, like a week or two, in about 2 weeks. And so it's going to be almost Halloween, which means it's almost Thanksgiving, which means it's almost Christmas. It's basically almost the holiday season, which is crazy. And this is where, those traditional recipes are really there, especially taking your grandmother's recipe and changing it. I mean, if you feel comfortable with that and that's okay for you and it comes out okay, that's great. But I feel like we need to just give people permission that they don't have to change that recipe.
Yeah. That's something I think that is something that I'm really just working on moving forward in my life and at this place that I'm at. And those recipes that, my grandmother just passed away last month. And
I'm sorry.
Thank you. But she had this noodle kugel recipe, which is like a traditional Jewish recipe that you have on the Rosh Hashanah, which is a sweet New Year. And it's literally like pasta, eggs, and sugar. And my grandma used to put cornflakes on top. And you know what? Sometimes it's just such a special thing when someone in your family made it the exact same way, and it just connects you to those people and those moments who share those things. And I think that that's kind of what I'm looking for more with when the holidays come up, when I think about sweets or recipes or desserts, that sometimes it's more about the experience for that day rather than, how I want to feel about my body that day and kind of take that pressure off. That's just kind of where I'm moving towards in terms of how I'm approaching the holidays. And yeah, so those recipes are great.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I agree. I think that is definitely, what truly matters most going forward. At the same time, if it's maybe you're looking for maybe some swaps during the weekday because, you're celebrating a holiday, over the weekend or whatever. And I think, it's learning to, this is where it goes back to there's no good or bad foods. It's really just you knowing what it is that you want and need and knowing that can change day to day and it will change day to day. And so sometimes you might want to create, I saw that cookie dough recipe, which I want you to tell people about.
Oh my God, so good.
So it might be making a healthier cookie dough and I'm going to assume it's with chickpeas because that's how I made it. Okay. I'll never forget. I was a dietitian for a supermarket for about 4 or 5 years or something. It was my last job before I went full time. So I had no choice but to be in the recipe, no recipes then, because that's what I would create a recipe and have the supermarket people at the supermarket taste it and try to sell a product. I love my job, but I did not like that part. If you couldn't tell, I have no passion about this. I just love other people talking about it and doing it, but I'm okay with not. Anyways, but that was actually one that I really got excited about. So I just went on a tangent to say sometimes you might make a healthier alternative cookie dough recipe, and then other times you might just eat the straight cookie dough.
Well, that's pretty much my entire Instagram, and most of my dessert recipes are all lightened up. I mean, the reason why first of all, my number one tip with making desserts is I always make small serving recipes because I'm one person. I try to be very no one needs 20 brownies sitting in their house unless you get 5.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I really try to make my servings small so that you don't need that much, you don't need that much flour. You don't need all that stuff. But, I love creating different swaps for just to make it healthier in one area. And that's that. I made a chickpea peanut butter cookie dough with dark chocolate chips, and it was all in the blender. So good.
Yeah, it's so good. And honestly, guys, it sounds complicated, but it's super simple. So, I'm going to put Nicole's information in the show notes. So keep listening. But at the end, you definitely want to check out her Instagram to get that recipe. So good. So I'm curious, what are some of your favorite recipes where you've made healthier alternatives of some of your faves?
Well, I have to say my probably my most popular recipe are my bagels. So I make a high fiber protein everything bagel with, I think it has about like 5 or so ingredients, with flaxseed, coconut flour, egg whites, psyllium husk, which is like the fiber, and it actually gives like a really amazing texture too. And I forget what else is in it. I think it's like 5 ingredients. I haven't made them in like a while, but that's actually my most popular recipe because people really like meal prep options. They want things on the go, and also things that sometimes scratch the itch of the real deal when they really want it.
Right.
They're really amazing. They come out, you can make one big one or you can make like 2 mini ones, which I prefer. So that's probably my most popular recipe. It's on my website. And then also I make these cookie dough truffles with like chocolate on the outside. And it's just like an almond flour with a little peanut butter, a little low carb like maple syrup, roll it all together and then dip it in dark chocolate. And I keep them in the freezer, actually cut them in half because it doesn't matter how big or small you make them. They're so good. Again, with the texture thing, a little flaky sea salt, and those are amazing too. Those were 2 2020 recipes also.
Those sound amazing, especially if you like salty sweet. I would probably, I don't mind salt. I just don't like salt. I've never liked chocolate covered pretzels. Like people like that. I don't know. I don't like the salty sweet combo. I don't. It's either I like one or the other. But for those, I know people go crazy for that. So for those who like the salty sweet combo, I feel like that sounds so perfect.
That sounds sweet. It's and crunchy. So salty, sweet, crunchy is probably my like perfect trio right there.
So what would that be for you?
Probably a chocolate covered pretzel.
Sorry. That's okay. You have that. I would like a peanut butter milkshake. Like,
I don't like milkshakes at all. At all.
We're opposite. It's fine.
I would pass.
We could make a bunch of stuff and then we won't fight over it. It's kind of like, what part of the cookie, the black or white part, do you like?
I don't even like the texture of the black and white cookie at all.
Oh.
I am like straight chocolate chip. That's it.
Okay.
Cookie. I like the Levain ones, but I want like a simple crisp, like a Tate's cookies, like my ideal.
Oh, those are amazing.
I know. I keep them in the freezer. That is a secret hack. They're so good in the freezer. And then you like crumble them over ice cream.
That sounds I
might be doing that later. So. I saw the idea.
That's awesome. So you kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but because you mentioned like keeping like 3 like pieces of equipment on hand and like experimenting with those, but like what would you recommend? Like what are your, not even what would you recommend, like what are your favorite pieces of equipment that you have that you find yourself using a lot?
Okay, nonstick pan is number 1. Have to have it. You don't even need an oven. If you have one good pan, you make really good omelets, you make really good chicken, fish, vegetables, whatever you want. So easy to clean, minimal cleanup, and everything just comes out good when you have a quality pan. I have on my website, I believe, a list of like kitchen essentials. So if anyone's curious, you can go on there and find it.
Oh, awesome.
Number 2 is a muffin tray, because muffin trays are so versatile. You can pretty much do everything with them.
That's my one recipe that I have for my clients. They're egg muffins. They're egg muffins.
You can make egg muffins with them. You can make obviously like muffins in general. I've also made like turkey meatballs in a muffin tray. Like you don't have like a regular baking tray, you put a little piece of tinfoil on top. Like you can get really creative with the muffin tray. Also,
that's a smart idea. Wait, I just want to pause on that. So if you don't have a baking tray, you take your muffin tray and you just put tinfoil over it.
Yeah.
And now you have.
I would definitely do a few pieces.
That's awesome.
But if you don't have one or it's not clean, use the muffin tray. You can also, I just thought of this, you could probably maybe make a donut on the back of it if you turn it upside down. I'm not sure, but I just thought of this now. There's my OT brain. I think the last piece of equipment is a quality knife set. You need a quality knife set. I just bought one on Amazon. Oh, there's always sales. I got a great, very aesthetically pleasing one for my counter. I think a quality knife set's so important because you want to chop vegetables. You want everything to be easy. You don't want to be like slamming down into the kitchen. And I just think it makes the food taste so much better.
And they last a while. So even though a knife set can get a little pricey, you know, how often do you change your knife set?
And I've never done it.
Exactly. So I just wanted to, like, for the listeners, because
never done it.
It's like you know, like those are the things that we get so like caught up in prices of things, but it's like, it's not like you're getting a new one of these every year.
Yep.
You know?
I just moved, so that's why I got one. Oh, and then a blender. So I'm going to pass on the Vitamix. I'm going to pass on the really expensive ones. I love my small Ninja blender. I do smoothies. I use it as a food processor, even though it's probably not one.
It's really strong, though. My old job, I used the Ninja a lot for like demos and stuff, and it's
small one.
Yeah. It's really, to me, it feels like I'm using a food processor.
Yeah. So I think I gave you 4, but those 3 or 4 are.
But it's truly, because you can make so many things. Like with a blender, like you said, people just think smoothies, but it's like, no, you can make a pesto, you can make your own nut butters, especially like with a Ninja.
Yep.
Like there's.
Or whatever. You could really do
Or
anything.
soup. Yeah.
Chop things.
I'm going to put you, I want to ask you a question on the spot. I probably have it, but actually one of my clients was looking for a butternut squash recipe. Mm-hmm. Do you have any?
Like a butternut squash soup recipe?
I'm sorry, that's what I meant. It's butternut squash soup, yeah.
My best friend actually is making one for her boyfriend this weekend, and I'm so bad with soup, so I'm hoping to grab it from her. So
okay. Let me know. And then, because that is definitely something that I definitely love in the fall. There's some, that you can buy out at some very standard places like Sheins, which they're fine, but there's probably is a way to make it a little bit healthier without so much either like cream or sugar or whatever they put in there to make it taste like as good as they make it taste. I'm sure there's a way you can make it yourself. And then also too, to just save money so you don't have to buy it every time you want it.
Yeah, that's something I really want to get into this holiday season, is getting better at making soups and just kind of making them a little bit more user-friendly and approachable. I think like soups can be so easy, but they seem so complicated because the simmer, the turning it back up, like there seems like there's so many steps to get it the right texture. So that's going to be my project.
So, well, you let me know, because that's the difference between like me and you, in the sense of like someone who uses recipes, and then to me, is like a soup is not technically complicated. I just throw everything in there with some water and like broth, and I just boil it and simmer it for like a couple hours, and then I have soup. Like that's what I think. I just like throw random spices in there, but I'm sure like what you do is you put the love into it, you put the time and attention, which makes it probably so much better. I just don't do that.
I'm moving here when I'm cooking, so it's like.
But can we just talk about how cooking can be such a stress reliever and such an enjoyable thing once in the beginning, if you don't know how to cook, it can obviously, like anything new, it can be a little stressful, but once you learn it, like it can be therapeutic.
Definitely. I think that what is so great for me about cooking is that it requires obviously you have to focus on what you're doing, but you're thinking about all these steps and you're thinking about all the things that you have to do to create something. And I think that process alone can take you away from anything that happened before you walked into your wherever you live, and you're just focusing on what's the next step. And I think the process of creating something can really just take your mind off of anything. And, that's really why I fell so in love with it, because it allowed me to kind of shut off the day, and now you're done. You put work into something, and I think that that's what makes it so fun. And then the plating part is really fun too. It makes the food taste so much better. I really believe that when you
elaborate. What do you mean?
So when I first started learning how to cook, I remember I was making like a zucchini, like a grilled, like some like chicken thing. And I remember I just finished it, and I took the pan and I just poured it onto my plate, and then I sat down and then I ate it. I was like, oh, this like doesn't look appetizing. Like part of the appeal of going to a restaurant is because everything comes out so perfect. And so if you just take that extra maybe 1 to 2 minutes of putting it really nicely on the plate, I guarantee you will enjoy the food so much more. You will also eat it a lot slower because you took time to plate it. You just appreciate the work that you just put in to make it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you built this beautiful thing and now you're just going to wrap it up like messy, you know, finish it out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think slowing down while eating is something that we can all learn to do, because I feel like we're always on the go. Even with now, you know, even in COVID, like somehow we were busy doing nothing, and now we're back in the hustle and bustle of things, and now we're busy again. And I think it's important. I think that's a really good thing to like really have someone kind of slow down and enjoy what they just created and plating it, and, you know, like you said, finishing it out. I think that's really awesome. And then I do want to also talk about, because I have shared a couple of times recently about kind of bringing the joy into the mundane, because like you just described cooking as a very enjoyable experience and something that can be stress-free. And I agree with you. But then I also work with a lot of moms who feel like they need to cook. They have to cook just to get it out because their kids want something, their husband wants something, they want something else. And like, it's not enjoyable to them. It feels like a chore to them. Yeah. Is there anything that you would say to someone who feels that way in a way that to help them bring the joy back a little bit?
Well, the first thing I would say is just, here's my little female empowerment thing. If your client is a woman and she's cooking for everyone, I would just let her know that she's the one that's cooking, so she should decide what everybody eats. And it's so great that you want to be mindful of everybody's palates and moods, but if you're putting in all that work, let people be, you know, appreciative of you, and maybe ask them, you know, I really would love if you helped. Something like that. Just, you know, you're in charge of that experience. And then also take it as just time for you. Whoever your family is, whoever, you know, your friends are, roommates that, you know, put you on the joy of cooking for the next hour. Take that time. You know what? Kids have to go play with dad, or, you know, roommates, you go clean whatever. Like, here's my time. And just, I think when you make it your time and you allow it to be your time, I think you'll appreciate it a lot more. And it really doesn't matter so much what you're doing, but just give yourself permission to like have it be your space.
Put on your favorite music, like
AirPods in, wine, a cup of tea, whatever you want. Just make it your time.
Yeah. That's such great advice. This is such a good episode. Nicole, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you feel like our listeners would benefit hearing from?
I don't know. I just think that I hope that this episode really inspires everybody, whether you are an advanced chef or you've never really cooked before, just to not be afraid of trying something that might seem a little bit difficult, because I really think that's how you build confidence around any type of skill, is just kind of taking one step forward. So I encourage everyone, when they listen to this, go find a recipe that you've been dying to make and tackle it, and then share it, and then tag us both on Instagram so we can.
That will make me so happy. I think getting back into the kitchen is, you can have the choice to order out and order in and all that stuff, but I think being able to prepare food for yourself is like probably like a skill that we I think it's kind of those things, like just like learning how to eat to fuel your body. It's kind of just like, we kind of need that, and then we can worry about all that other stuff, but like it's gonna help us a lot. It's going to benefit us a lot.
And I also think that just cooking for yourself, it gives you so much more confidence in other areas. And I think that it's a skill that you could be so proud to share. Like, obviously, food is so important in terms of community. We eat with our families, we eat with our friends, we eat with our neighbors. And I think that when you are able to bring something to the table that you worked hard on and you're super proud of, it's just like this confidence boost that you can't really get anywhere else. And when people like you ate what you made and they want to know how you made it, it just opens up such a different conversation than, you know, you might have had. I think it's just a really great way to, and an area to build confidence that obviously has so many other benefits aside from just, you know, the cooking skill.
Yeah, totally. Like when you said that, I thought of connection. Like, I feel like so many people can connect over like who makes the best sauce, or like how do you make your sauce, or like, you know, like it's true. It's so much more than just like learning how to cook for yourself.
And that's what's so amazing about the Instagram community, is there's such a huge place to share ideas, share recipes, and share pictures, and just kind of comments about like this was so great for me to incorporate it into my life. And it's just such a really great thing. So I encourage everyone to go pick out a recipe, make something, and tag us both.
Yes, definitely. So where do they find you on Instagram? Or you also mentioned your website, or any other way someone would contact you? How would they do that?
Find me on Instagram at Lashes and Lemons. And then the link to my website is in my bio, but it's also just lashesandlemons.com. I was lucky enough to, no one else had the same URL as me. So I got it.
That's awesome. That's so great. I love it. It's such a great name. Well, anyways, Nicole, thank you again so much for being here. Really appreciated it. Really appreciated what you had to share. Those who are listening to the podcast, if you're an old time listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you're a new listener, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and definitely tag me and tag Nicole. Let us know what you thought of the episode. I will be back next week. And I just want to say thanks so much for listening. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.